Okay, greetings and welcome to another episode of Pop's Collection, where we dissect and reflect on a movie or TV show from my Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy, joining me as Pops, and today we're going to be talking about Green Lantern.
Hello, everybody. So glad you're with us. And Ron, first, I want to apologize to you that you had to sit through watching that movie. But hey, I sat through it again also.
Yeah.
And you know how I always tell you that sometimes I watch the movie just for the enjoyment of the movie. This was not one of those times.
Okay.
For some reason. I found myself, when we decided to do this, I mean, it's probably one of the very few DCs that we actual motion action pictures that we haven't done. So
Yeah.
other than this, and there's two others. But when we had talked about it, and I said, maybe we'll see if it is worse than Birds of Prey. If you remember my comment.
Yeah.
Well, I found myself doing some research on bad DC movies.
Okay.
Because I felt like that this one was a bad one, but actually, for its release date in 2011, it had a $200 million budget, and it actually made $219.9 million, almost 220 million.
Yeah.
But then I looked into it further and found out that they had spent $100 million to promote it.
Yeah, marketing. Yep.
Yeah, it's like
they took a bath with this one, and we'll get into it, I think, a little bit later. I think that there's I kind of have to change my story a little bit. I made some when we talked about some of the other DC films, I made some points and kind of tried to play armchair quarterback about how they should have done things and how they could have done things better. And this movie kind of actually changes my view of that a little bit. So
really,
yeah. Well, I mean,
good.
I don't know if it's good, but we'll see.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's nice that you developed a different perspective.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you can't always look at something in the same way. When I was
that's true.
When I was watching it, in my head I'm thinking, is this the worst DC? Technically, based on the box office and adding the marketing, it was pretty bad.
Well, yeah, from a monetary performance standpoint, you can make the case. Although right. I do think Birds of Prey also did pretty poorly as well, and they blamed it on COVID. But I think the idea is that it actually was a crappy movie. But anyway,
well, it was. They really based on Birds of Prey's numbers, which I wrote down also because like I said, I was looking.
Yeah.
They had only $100 million budget and made over 200 million. So they probably, if they were to, and I doubt that they spent that much in marketing, but even if they were to spend 100 million in marketing, they broke even.
Yeah.
So not the worst. I even thought of your all-time favorite Ninja Turtles movie, TMNT3, and even that made over double what they had for a budget.
Well, the production quality was really, really bad with that one. I mean, the fact is, with TMNT3, as you'll remember, they didn't even have Splinter come from behind. He was a puppet the whole time. They never showed a full body shot of Splinter because of
right.
They did. So
right. Yeah, in that particular case, the movie itself was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
But it somehow in the box office made a clear profit.
Yeah. And just because something makes money doesn't necessarily mean it's a good film. I think we should put that out there as a truism, you know.
Oh, sure, sure. Um, yes, but I'll try to get off this tangent. I do have to say that flat out flops for DC.
Okay.
Some of the worst were Catwoman and Supergirl, which was
Yes.
the actual fourth movie before they came out with Superman 4.
Okay.
And when we had that conversation, I had to look even at Superman 4, and
Yeah.
it wound up making almost double in profit. So monetarily, it did great.
Mm-hmm.
But with this movie, I was really expecting a lot. I mean, Martin Campbell directed it.
Okay.
And if you're familiar with Martin Campbell,
Not
he also directed GoldenEye and Casino Royale, both really good Bond movies.
Martin
You know,
Campbell directed Casino
yes.
Royale? Was it Sam Mendes?
According to my research
Okay.
on Martin
All right.
Campbell, because I was looking
Yeah.
to see what else he did, because I thought, my God,
Yeah.
this is not that great, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
yeah. So based on that, I thought, wow, it should be pretty good,
Yeah, you would think.
you know. And then also the screenplay writers for this, Greg Berlanti,
Yeah.
Berlanti and Michael Green and Mark Guggenheim,
Mhm.
who, you know, did the Arrowverse.
Oh, okay.
You know, they did all of those TV shows, which a lot of them were very, very good.
Yeah.
You know, and even they were somehow involved into um, the even Lucifer and another one too that they had looked at did into that. I thought, you know, okay, so good writers. Jeff Johns,
Yep.
who's a great comic book writer, him and Berlanti
Mhm.
were a couple of the producers. So I was expecting a lot more from this film than what we got.
Interesting.
You know, you would have thought with all that it would have been good.
Right. So I don't. I'll be honest. I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with the source material with Green Lantern. I mean, do you?
Well, it originally started in the 1940s, and there's been
Right.
numerous Green Lanterns. Alan
I,
Scott was the first one.
I'm familiar with the fact that this Green Lantern character, there have been many people, many of Earthlings even that have had the ring. Like you said, Alan Scott's the first one, right? In the Golden Age.
Yes, yes. And we learned in this movie that there's like 3,600 Green Lanterns.
Yeah, across the galaxy or the universe or whatever.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little piece of information. But
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just looking at because I still have the DC universe online, so I've looked at the first appearance of Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern because that's the story focuses on, and
right.
the it's pretty accurate, I think, that from a story perspective, the origin at least, because you got him with the with the alien crash landing.
Yes,
They get
this
hearing like,
origin is very close to
yeah.
that story.
But the thing is that this particular story is from 1959, and so you have a story that's the story itself is several decades removed from modern day where this film takes place, and so I'm wondering if some of that has something to do with the fact that this kind of fell flat as a story here. But
Well, there was a number of reasons for this, and based on my experience or my
yeah,
the different Green Lantern characters,
yeah,
we've had this conversation before about actors
Yeah.
that seem to portray every character the same, or they're quite similar. Like this Hal Jordan character that's played by Ryan Reynolds
Right.
is that character, the way he played that character was perfect for the way that he played Deadpool,
Oh yeah.
because that followed the comic.
Yeah.
This Hal Jordan character was a little bit more different. I feel like he is more like the Guy Gardner type character.
Okay.
And I want you to look down at the bottom here at his mask.
Yeah.
You see that mask there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That is nowhere near the mask that they tried to CG onto Ryan Reynolds.
Okay, that we're going to talk about that. That to me was what took me completely out of the film.
Absolutely.
So anyway, but this particular screen here is from Rebirth, which is kind of like a reimagining or retelling of the Hal Jordan story, but it involves all of the other Arrows. It's got Jon Stewart, it's got Jessica Cruz, it's got even Green Arrow is weaved into the story. So I do think that we should talk about that. When the Green Lantern really kind of came into its own is when Denny O'Neil as a writer took over the book, and they combined it with Green Arrow. And so Green Arrow, Green Lantern was a book for a while. In fact, it was also the first, I think DC, maybe even the first comic storyline to deal with drug addiction. Speedy, who was the Green Arrow sidekick, became addicted to heroin. And
that is true.
That was kind of a groundbreaking thing. And then the other thing is that Denny kind of made a political interplay between Green Arrow and Green Lantern, because Green Arrow is this ultra liberal guy, and the other guy, and Green Arrow they played off of each other.
Right, right, and that was great.
Yeah. So obviously there's and to me, I think the most interesting thing about the Green Lantern thing is the Lantern Corps and all the different factions, and you have the yellows lanterns and the reds and the blues and the pinks, and all kinds of color ones. And to me, I think that is the more interesting thing about Green Lantern. And we got just a little bit at the very end of the credits when it comes to that stuff. And so it's like, this was an origin story. Yeah, fair enough, that's fine. But the other part of it is to me, the reason why, and I guess we'll go ahead and talk about it now, is that like when we were talking about, we started with Man of Steel, because that was considered the first film in the DCEU,
right?
And I my point, particularly that one, and then Batman v Superman, my opinion was that, hey, why kind of shoot your wad at the beginning and like go with your big tier characters? Why don't you start with something smaller story? And then I realized that that's exactly what Green Lantern was supposed to be in 2011.
That's correct. It was.
And not only that, this is the part that I think makes it a bad movie. It's because it's derivative of Iron Man. They're trying to make an Iron Man movie out of Green Lantern, and it doesn't work because Green Lantern is not an Iron Man type of character, meaning that in fact, you could even see some of the story elements were taken directly from Iron Man. When he's flying against the drones, how does he beat the drones? Oh, he goes up really high in the air and he stalls out and he falls down to that's exactly what happened in Iron Man when he fought Ironmonger.
That's true.
I mean, completely. So to me, and that's the thing, is that Hal Jordan, that's the thing. I think they were expecting Ryan Reynolds to play a Robert Downey Jr. type of character, and he's just not suited to do it.
Not even close.
Right.
And the fact, there's, originally when they were going to, the movie first got pitched by Corey Reynolds. No relation, of course. Okay. And he approached WB in 2007 with a trilogy where he was going to play Jon Stewart, Green Lantern.
Yeah, yeah.
And studio seemed interested in doing that, but around 2009, 2010, they moved on into a different direction. And they were possibly going to do a trilogy with this, but From what I read, and you could see it in the movie, that I don't think Ryan Reynolds was all that excited about doing this movie.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, he had made a comment that they knew what they wanted and they knew what the story was going to be, but they didn't have a script for that.
Right.
So if that was the case, then they probably lacked some direction.
Mhm.
So if they really weren't, as the director didn't have a clear sight, then he's not going to be able to, impress that on the actors.
Right.
So I'm still going to say that Ryan Reynolds was the wrong person to
Oh
play
yeah.
the Green Lantern.
Well, if like you said, maybe you've been more suited to play like a Guy Gardner Green Lantern.
Yes, absolutely. Because he's that Guy Gardner is that
Yeah.
type of Green Lantern.
Yeah. Yeah.
But between that and also the storyline,
Mhm.
I know you're not too familiar with the other stories, but on Cartoon Network, they had Green Lantern, the animated series.
Uh-huh.
And in that series, you have the Red Lanterns, the Blue Lanterns,
Right.
And you actually get the story of how all those different lanterns interact.
Yeah. See, to me, that's the way more interesting part. Like,
Absolutely.
I would have rather them spend the majority of the movie with him in outer space, dealing with that stuff as opposed to, this Earth stuff with, Parallax, which, that's fine. That wasn't really a big deal. And I do think that the story elements of, fear and will, these two things fighting against each other, is interesting. And the idea of courage and, him working through that is, those are good elements. But I think that ultimately the setting made it so boring that you really did, there was a hint of a good movie in there. Like
when they were on Oa.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly that. That's where I started, was like, oh yeah, okay. It started actually, holding my attention when he's, training and whatnot. After I got over the costume, that to me completely was the most ridiculous.
I couldn't. The only
So
time
ridiculous.
the only time I got over it
Yeah.
is when the mask disappeared. That mask totally ruined it for me.
The mask itself is not, I think, the problem. I think the problem is they made his eyes blue when he has the mask on.
Yes, and then they kind of
They look
developed
like they're
this.
animated eyes, and it's really, really,
Yes.
really
Well,
stupid.
and did you notice the nose? It kind of looked like he had a beak almost.
Yeah.
The
Well,
the nose was real pointy.
yeah, I mean, that to me doesn't really bother me. It's, and I understand they made an in-universe explanation saying that this is not like a suit or costume; it's pure energy, right?
Yes.
That's what
Yes.
they said. So
Right.
that's
That
why
was their
that was the
explanation.
excuse that they gave to make it a CG suit. At the same time, it looked horrible.
It did. Well, I don't know if it was the company that they used or
Well,
if
maybe the
we're
technology
talking
wasn't there.
2011.
Right. So, you have to contrast that or compare it to 2019 when Endgame came out. Those quantum suits that everybody had, no actor wore any suit like that. Those don't exist. They're all computer generated. You can't tell.
Right. No, you can't.
So,
And that's the thing with the newer CG, is that a lot of it is just,
yeah.
it's done so well.
Yeah.
And that's with the technology. But still, I feel like in 2011 that they did have a good technology.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
you have to
trying
remember
to.
that the Thor came out just a few months before this came out.
Yes.
So, and by contrast to that, Thor, all those costumes were authentic, and all of those were the best costumes, I think, in the MCU. Some of the best costumes. I mean, just top notch, like so well done. So, it's like, it's kind of bad,
Yes, yes. And let's just spend a minute on the next red herring in the movie, Hector Hammond.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, for a villain, I know Parallax is the main villain, but that's
Yeah.
the villain of all the Green
Right.
Lanterns.
Right.
This is the earthly bad guy that you chose
Yeah.
for Hal Jordan.
He kind of reminded me of MODOK, what happened.
A little bit,
Yeah.
bit. Which, since you mentioned that, if you ever get the opportunity to watch the animated series,
Yeah.
when they fight the red lanterns,
Yeah.
there is a lantern that looks like MODOK
Oh,
somewhat.
yeah.
Yeah, he's got a red outfit. He kind of looks like a basketball with arms and legs,
Okay.
but he kind of is like a MODOK face,
Yeah.
from the comic books,
Yeah.
that MODOK face. But
Yeah. See, and
when I
that
see him, I think of that.
yeah. See, like you said, that there's this whole rich tapestry of all these other beings that are part of the core, and they interact a little bit, and you get maybe a total of 20 minutes total runtime of that part. And I was like, I want more of that. I don't want this other Earth stuff. I mean, it's interesting, I guess. But the thing what makes it work in Iron Man and not work here is because the character and the antagonist and the stakes, everything is more down to earth in Iron Man. It's all stuff that there's nothing like supernatural per se about any of that stuff, or cosmic about any of that stuff. It's all based on Earth. And they could have gone that route, because the first, the group he's kidnapped by is the 10 Rings, which we're finally going to see the fruition of the 10 Rings in a couple months, which I'm really excited about. But they didn't go that route. They kept everything grounded down to earth. In this one, they should have just went full hog. This is all cosmic, crazy sci-fi stuff. They should have done that. And I think it would have been a better film.
Well, again, we had talked about this with other films. If they went total horror and went with an R rating, it would make the movie better.
Yeah.
The road that they went down on this was really not that great. There was a animated Green Lantern called First Flight, which is really the same type origin story with Hal Jordan. But Nathan Fillion does the voice for that, the Castle actor, and he was in a couple of other comic book things like Serenity and what have you. And he does a great job of being Hal Jordan.
Right.
I would have much rather seen him. He's probably, I don't know if he would have been too old looking at that time, but I think if you know Nathan Fillion, that that he has the hair from the comic books.
Sure.
But even the way that mask was, I don't think mask was just so wrong.
That's silly.
I just and that's the problem when they were on AO. I could not get past that mask.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I tried and tried, and they did such a wonderful job of all the other Green Lanterns.
They did. It's crazy.
I mean, really. And they did a great job with the Guardians too.
Yep.
Yeah,
actually, the Guardians reminded me of those aliens from, I don't know if you remember the episode of Star Trek with the menagerie or the cage.
Yes.
They looked like them.
They looked a lot similar, I have to say, except that in this, the Guardians are really, really short,
Right. Well, they were short in, I think it was Talos 5 or something like that. The aliens Talos 5, they were like that too. I think they had a different skin tone. They weren't gray. They were more pinkish.
Yeah, maybe. That's
they had
true.
A giant brain and everything. And,
So. Yeah, that was good. I agree. Definitely. So the story itself.
Yeah.
The only positives I'm going to say in this story was the space parts of the story. Every other part in this story was either lacking substance or lacking movement.
Well, and the other part is that you don't really have a whole lot of stakes, right? There's Hal Jordan is not this character that I didn't feel a connection to, but like other people tried to feel a connection to, but like it showed like he didn't really, like, for instance, the his nephew that was, concerned about him crashing or whatever. It's like, you know, to me that just seemed kind of forced, her relationship with Carol, same thing, it wasn't like I don't know, like the chemistry between someone like Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow is totally different than Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
I would agree with that 100%. And the best part to me, though, was where he came down, the big reveal,
Yeah.
where she like knew right away who he was.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is one thing that a lot of these superheroes have to deal with, is the whole secret identity thing. That was a huge trope back in the Silver Age. And, we talk about this all the time, the fact that, Clark Kent, he puts glasses on and it's like, oh yeah, I can't tell you're Superman or whatever. And
right. That's why I got Clark Kent glasses now.
Yeah,
that way nobody will know who I am.
Yeah, and I think Marvel kind of sets the stage at the end of Iron Man 1 saying, yeah, we're not doing this secret identity nonsense. I am Iron Man. And then that's it. It just kind of like blows it all up.
Right.
So I don't know. To me, that is one thing that I would say is that definitely makes it a more dated thing if you're trying to keep your secret identity, which is why they had the mask and why I can go back on and off, and why it looks like a terrible CG thing.
So. It doesn't look like it is a terrible CG thing.
I honestly think if I wonder if somebody's already done this, but if you were to have taken out the eyes, so it's just like white instead of it being those blue eyes,
yes,
it might look a little bit better. Because that's what kind of like is in the comics anyway, right? Because he doesn't really can't see his eyes. So I would say, I wonder if there's a cutout there that does that. I have to see.
Well, that's the thing. As you could tell, I'm wearing my Green Lantern shirt, and it's because I like the character. I think he's a really good character.
Yeah.
It wasn't my top of the list.
Yeah.
Of comics to read, but if I had a Green Lantern, I would take the time to read it. Storylines were good, and let's face it, wouldn't it be cool if you could have a ring and just whatever you thought about, you could make it happen?
So let me ask you this, as a person who does, is familiar with some more of the stories and whatnot, what would have made a better Green Lantern story as the first story?
Well, I would say that if you developed Hal Jordan as character, I mean, how much time did they spend on him as a young boy? Not a whole lot.
Okay.
If they were to develop the story a little bit more, and you've seen some stories where the reveal isn't till the very end of the story, but if they had made his journey one where they took more time with him, learning his responsibilities and developing and finding out about all the different lanterns, so that he could be more astute in being able to battle against them. I think that would have made a better story if we got a younger Hal Jordan.
Okay.
And him discovering all of these issues about his will, because they talked about his will and not really much about his courage until she kind of like brought it out that, well, you have to have the courage to not be afraid and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they were to develop that a lot better, I think it would have made a better story.
Okay.
And instead of it being Hector or Parallax, I think if they were to have a battle with the Red Lanterns, or the Red Lanterns were to come to Earth, I mean,
Yeah.
Parallax is going to come to Earth and eat up everybody and destroy the Earth. So that's kind of the end of the story if he were to get away with it, right?
Okay.
Whereas it kind of reminds me of the Fantastic Four story with the Silver Surfer.
Mm-hmm.
Almost kind of the same character, except that they had, one of the Guardians' heads in the middle of all of those clouds. Why not, have a story with a group of lanterns that are going to try to get a foot on Earth, whereas they're not really going to be. It would be more of a story of them trying to take over rather than trying to demolish and totally destroy the Earth.
Okay.
Just where there could be some kind of a conflict and battle.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe he loses the ring,
Yeah.
and has to work to get it back. I don't know.
Okay.
Just a thought. What about for you?
It is. I do think that having Sinestro start out as a Green Lantern and then at the very, very, very end and a mid-credit sequence, finally get the yellow, lantern or suit or whatever. That to me, I think Sinestro should have been the first villain and not Parallax.
I would go for that.
Yeah, that would have made it a lot better. That, and I think, and I still think that there's some value there saying that Will being the weapon that defeats fear is. I think there's actually a really good lesson in there, meaning that as human beings, we have all of these emotions that we experience: fear, Red Lanterns was rage, and all these negative emotions or whatnot. But it's our will that helps us to overcome and not be a slave to those emotions, and help us to conduct ourselves in a way that is not just being totally driven by instinct or emotion.
Right, or Pink Lanterns, which is love.
Right.
And then the blue is peace.
Right.
So those things all of that could help to,
right.
I guess they have a color for every emotion.
They do.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them all, but there are plenty of different ones. As a matter of fact, the female character in this has a lot of time been known as Sapphire,
mm-hmm.
too. So, or Star Sapphire. So,
right. Yeah.
Which is the love emotion, which is another part that they explore in the animated series.
Yeah.
So it's like you had this great story.
Yeah.
And this is the one you're going to go with?
I mean, they do have to do an origin of some sort. I get that,
Right, but they could have either developed it a lot better, and then made the reveal at the end, or set it up so that when he became Green Lantern, that he had a foe. It, like you said, it could have been Sinestro, would have been good.
Yeah.
And, the Green Lantern's telling him that, hey, this is fear. You're going to have to deal with fear.
Yeah.
And that would have been a much better story, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And to me, if they really wanted to still go down the same route, try to make an Iron Man like movie, they shouldn't have picked Green Lantern. I think that was the wrong choice. Green Arrow, I think you could make the case for, but that might have been a little bit too on the nose. You have a, billionaire playboy that, gets, everything taken away from him, and then he has to claw his way back to civilization. That's exactly what happens in Iron Man. So it's like, okay, we'll just rip off Iron Man a little bit with the, the drones and everything. So it's like,
well, in Arrow, the TV series,
mm-hmm.
it took 8 seasons to tell that story.
And that's the other thing that I wanted to follow up on, because you mentioned that a lot of the talent behind TV, the Arrowverse, was responsible for the story of this movie. And maybe that's their wheelhouse is not necessarily telling a story that unfolds over 2 hours, but unfolds over 20 episodes,
Yes, I will have to say, thankfully, that this was 6 minutes short of 2 hours, thankfully.
Right.
But yes, you are probably right. They are better at telling a long distance story as opposed to a short.
Yeah, so maybe that's what it's suffering from, because I don't think. Well, maybe you probably could do. In fact, they did announce that there is a Green Lantern series in development right now that's going to be on HBO Max. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, that would be good. And I'm wondering if that's why, they had announced that this was the final season for Black Lightning and also the final season for Supergirl. And last year was the final season of Arrow. So
yeah,
is Flash still going to continue? Is Legends of Tomorrow going to continue? Or are they all going to shut off and go to HBO Max? Because Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. also their final season 7.
Yeah.
And now we see a lot of new Marvel on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So is that going to be the new norm now? I wonder.
It could be.
Well, I have to say, based on this movie, I had wished so much that it would have been a different Green Lantern.
Yeah.
I do like at the end of the second Deadpool 2 where he flashes back and reads the Green Lantern script and blows his brains out.
Yeah, and I think the Teen Titans Go to the Movies also had a dig at Green Lantern as being.
Yes, they did. Yes.
No, they get it. I'm glad that they get it. I'm hoping that they can redeem it with maybe this new series will be good. I don't know. They're supposed to have, all those other characters from the Green Lantern. So
the Green Lantern Corps.
Stewart, yeah.
That's that. I heard something about that. I thought it was a movie though, called the Green Lantern Corps.
Mm-hmm.
But it may be, like you say, maybe it's going to be a series.
Yeah, it's what I last read about it, which was last night. So
that would make a lot of sense. Just think of how many episodes you could have if you did an episode for. You have 3,600 lanterns.
Yeah,
that would be quite a few seasons.
Sure.
Even if you shared it and split it with a few of them.
Yeah.
It would make for a great story.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I tried to remember. I know I have something with the squirrel as the Green Lantern. I'm trying to remember what DVD I have that has.
Is that a Lego one? Isn't the Lego one have?
It might be that. Yes, It might be. That's true. It might be.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting character, but they have so many.
Yeah.
That like Hal Jordan or Ryan Reynolds calling the one guy a fish.
Yeah.
But it was great. I love the voice actors and the characters that played the parts on Oa.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that gets me is that they could do CG well. That shows you that they could.
Yes.
So there's no excuse to why they screwed up the mask and the suit for Jordan.
That was the whole. Everything else that they did CG was not half bad.
Right. That's the thing. And Parallax, even as a amorphous smoke monster, was fine. It was totally passable. CGI. Like I said, the only thing that takes you out of it, some of the sillier things, like when he makes it makes the ring a Hot Wheels thing to save their helicopter, that was kind of silly. But at the end of the day, that's it's.
Plus, they made mention of it.
Yeah.
They pushed it themselves. Really, you could do whatever you want, and that's what you did. So. which kind of lends to the character that would be played by Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
know, so again, not my favorite one, but the fact that he could do anything with that rig, the Green Lantern character, makes
Yeah.
it very intriguing.
Sure.
And again, could have made it a wonderful movie. And like I said, when they originally thought of this, they were going to do it as a trilogy.
Yeah.
And the problem that I heard or read that is when they chose to do the promotion,
Yeah.
none of the action sequences were ready for the
Yeah.
promotion.
I could see that.
And so when the promotion came out, it got a really bad pan. Nobody really was interested in seeing based on what they saw. Kind of reminds me of the Eternals. The, what we've seen from that.
Yeah.
I really haven't seen anything that makes me say, I want to go to the movie theater and see that.
Yeah.
And I can imagine based on what I read that if I saw the Green Lantern without any kind of uh, interesting action scenes, I would feel the same way. And as I recall, I didn't go to the movies to see it.
No.
So now you didn't go to the movies because of what you read about it, or because of your feelings about Ryan Reynolds, or
No, it just goes completely, I mean, that time in my life, we, our lives as a family were pretty chaotic. We had two young boys and, just trying to keep our heads above water. I think I was still in school at the time. So, movies were kind of the secondary thing at that point. So,
and it had to be Marvel, otherwise you weren't going.
I mean, even Marvel movies, we missed out on a lot. We went to go see Iron Man. I think that was the only one we got to see, maybe Avengers in theater, and that was it. So,
Well, it's a good thing Pops has them on DVD.
mm-hmm.
And you now probably own most of them on Blu-ray.
Yeah, most of them. Yep.
Yeah, so. All right, so we talked about what we thought would be a better Green Lantern movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be your choice for a Green Lantern character?
For Hal Jordan?
Yes, for a Hal Jordan character.
I don't know. Maybe Chris Evans.
I could see that. I mean, he's played the Human Torch, Captain America.
Right.
He's played the bully in Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
He played one of the mercenaries in The Losers.
Yeah.
Which is another comic.
No.
And he's played the hero in Snowpiercer.
Mm-hmm.
So to mention, why not a DC character? Sure, that would work. Mine would be Nathan Fillion, because I feel like he portrays that comic character really well. Now, he's another guy that has a comic side to him, but he also can be somewhat serious. So I would go with him. Now, how about if we had the Jon Stewart character? Who do you think you would like to see play him? There's a lot of good choices for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking Michael B. Jordan probably, I think, would be a good choice.
Okay. I could see that. I'm thinking about the character that plays Arrow's sidekick or bodyguard. I know his name and I'm drawing a blank right now for some reason. I don't know why, but anyways, I think that he would make a good Stewart. But also I'm thinking that another DC character that plays on Supergirl, that
Okay.
plays John Jones,
Okay.
might also be a good character
Okay.
for that. And we won't go through Guy Gardner or Jessica Cruz or any of that.
All right.
That way, we won't tax your brain. It was sadly taxed enough having to watch that movie.
It was indeed. Yeah, I agree.
I have to tell you though, if you there was a Green Lantern called Simon Baz, B-A-Z.
Yeah. Okay.
I happen to like his Green Lantern outfit. You'll have to look him up to see, but he's actually, instead of a mask, he's got like a full face mask, kind of like a wrestler.
Okay.
Um, that looks pretty cool. So, but you'll have to look him up and check him out.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Any thing other than Fear versus Will?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you plucked that out of that. And for our listeners, if you feel that you're waiting on paint to dry or some other thing that you have time to kill, you want to watch this movie, I guess we'll have to rate it for you and you make the decision. So
Sure.
if I let you go first, will you surprise me?
I have no idea. We could try.
Probably not, right?
Yeah. Well, I forgot. Let's see. I forgot what I gave Birds of Prey. I don't remember.
Well, it
But-
wasn't. I can promise you it was under 5.
Well, yeah, obviously. I'm gonna go with 3 on this one. I think I rated Birds of Prey either a 2 or a 1.
Yes.
I think this. I would rather watch this movie again than have to watch Birds of Prey again. So, it's not. It's below average. It's not terrible. It's not like bad, and it's also not so bad it's good, like the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. So yeah, I think 3 is good. It's not a good film, and it's just unremarkable, and totally takes you out of the moment when you have to watch that CG costume.
Watching paint dry, watching the Green Lantern movie. Watching paint dry, watching the Green Lantern movie.
Yeah.
Watching,
Yep.
You will get more out of it. The only saving grace for me is Oa in this movie.
I agree.
And I would watch that part again.
Yeah, definitely.
I really thoroughly enjoyed that. Anything that was involved, and his defeat of Parallax.
Yeah,
that was a very good part of the movie. So
exactly. They had it in them. They had it in them for a good movie, but they ruined
right.
it.
They epically failed.
Yeah.
I am going to do just a little better than you and go 3.5.
Okay.
Only because I enjoyed those parts of the movie, which means that I could watch it again if the paint's already dry and I have nothing else to do.
Yep.
But yeah, so again, you're on your own. The only other thing I could say is that if we wanted to see what is worse, we could either watch Supergirl or Catwoman. But I'm going to save that for you and for our listeners for another time that we need to have paint dry. So,
okay.
Cool. Have you got any ideas of what you'd like to do next week?
Well, there's lots of things coming up that are new, and so I would just say to our listeners, stay tuned. We're going to definitely be. We'll have some hot takes on some of the new releases that are going to be coming out in the next month or so. And so I think we should just leave it at that because I don't know exactly when this episode is going to get published. Sound good?
That sounds really good to me. And I'm going to assume by the time it gets published that we're only going to be waiting a month for the 10 rings.
Yeah, probably.
So which is another one I'm really jazzed about seeing.
Yep, me too.
Okay, good. All right. Well, so then
Yep.
I guess that's it for now.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of Pop's Collection. If you have any feedback, feel free to shoot us an email at popscollectionpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a message on Facebook or Twitter. And we will see you next week. Goodbye and God bless.
Goodbye. God bless, and tell your friends.